Redeem your time, the topic of time. And as I started 5 minutes late, and there were only 3 people here, a comment from the door was made. This is a very appropriate lesson for today. So I want to mention that. Redeem your time. What we do with our time is important, and our theology, our knowledge of God and His Word, makes demands of how we spend our time. Now, when I sent the title of this to the bulletin maker, I got a comment saying, not another thing on the sluggard. There was already a daily devotion on the sluggard this week. This is not on the sluggard. This is a good approach to time. Okay, there's a bit of sluggard comment at the end, but because it does relate to how you use your time. But I want you to think of this study as God has given you time. Let's use it. Okay? God has given us an earthly entity, time, and for the most part, when I talk about time, I'm not talking about the minutes and hours, I'm talking about the time on earth. Okay, this short little time period thing, and we can use it for God. And we have a view of God, and we have a view of this earth's temporariness, we have a view of eternity that our theology informs us on. Let's kind of rob from our theology to get a theology of time, a practical theology. How does our systematic theology of God, of ourself, of this world, of eternity, of the gospel, of how salvation works, of injustice and evil and wickedness in this world, how does our theology of all that make us handle our time here on earth differently to unbelievers? Sadly, it would seem that the practical theology of Christianity today is that it doesn't make much of a difference. It makes a difference for about 2-3 hours on a Sunday, typically about an hour and a half somewhere in the week, and then typically 10 minutes every morning. And for the rest, you walk through this world and people can't even tell the Christian apart from the unbeliever just by seeing them live life for 10 minutes. How can we change that? How can we be the light and salt in this world that when people see our good works, they don't just say, oh, you're a good man, you're one of the better people in society. They actually say, what's wrong with you? Nobody acts this godly. What God do you serve? So let's talk about redeem the time. Now there's a word picture in redeem the time. Okay, redeem is not something you can do with time. You can use time, you can spend time, you can record time, you can allocate time. Redeem is a picture. Okay, now the word redeem in English isn't the richness of the picture, so let's go to Scripture, see what it says, and then we'll talk about this word picture of time. Turn to Ephesians chapter 5. By the way, Ephesians is going to be the next book we look at as a church to plumb some of those depths of our salvation and practical Christian living that Paul enjoyed writing about so much. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 15. Look carefully then how you walk. Okay, so immediately you're in familiar territory. You're like, yeah, this is very important for life. Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise. That's certainly relevant to us. Making the best use of the time, or redeeming the time, because the days are evil. Therefore do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. Okay, the days here isn't talking about Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. The days are evil is referring to the days in which we live. Okay, all the days around us are evil. Okay? I know some newspapers only focus on good news, but the rest of the newspapers mostly just focus on reality, which includes mostly bad news. The days are evil. So make the best use of your time, your period in all these days. It says, make the best use of, is the way the ESV translates this very special word that is also translated in some Bibles as redeem the time. So that word picture of redeem the time, we're going to look at in a moment. We need wisdom to live our time on earth pleasing to God when nobody else is living their period on earth pleasing to God. Turn to the parallel passage, somewhat different context. Ephesians and Colossians are certainly very similar. in their statements, but somewhat different every time in their context. Colossians 4, verse 5. Walk in wisdom toward outsiders, making the best use of the time. Okay, you see it again, the wisdom component, the redeem your time element, and the fact that the days are evil. Okay, there's unbelievers out there. It's full of unbelievers. Ephesians, the context is a lot of evil is happening. Don't take part of their evil deeds. It says earlier in the chapter, rather expose the evil deeds, and then you go and make the most of your time. Colossians, the context is a little bit different. It says, exploit every opportunity to speak the gospel. Just before this, he says, pray for me, so that when I speak in a really persuasive, godly, mature, full gospel presentation way. But both of them say, you're living in a world of unbelievers and wickedness. You're here for a time, so you go and buy back that time from the evil world. And you use it in not a foolish way like the world, but in a wise way. And if we can put wisdom in a more practical term, pleasing to the Lord would be the term. Okay, so redeem, it's a word picture. You buy back. Remember, God redeemed Israel out of Egypt. He made the Egyptians pay the price. And then he took them out for himself again. He redeemed us. He paid the price in Christ's death to redeem us, to buy us out of the domain of darkness, the slavery of sin, the slave market of sin. He paid the price to buy us out of that slavery and make us a slave of Christ instead, a free man as far as sin is concerned. So redeem is to pay the price or to pay the ransom amount. It's a similar terminology. Okay, the kidnappers took your kid, they want R1 million. You get every cent together that you can, and you want your kid back. You pay the price, and they deliver back your kid. I've bought back, I've redeemed, I've exploited and taken it away from that setting by paying a price. It's a great word picture, isn't it? Go, pay the price, whatever it might be, of buying back the evil use of your time to make it a pleasing God use of time. It's profound, isn't it? So the word redeem the time is to buy it all up. Here's one of the best theological definitions for the Ephesians, Colossians use of it. Okay, it's not redemption and salvation, it's redemption for time. And the definition it gives for this use of the word, it says, buying it all up to exhaust the options. Okay, so think of your time as being controlled by the world and the worldliness of the world, the evilness of the world. Now, the world has lots of things it can do with your time. There are lots of options. So you go and buy it all back. Take everything back. Not one bit may left, so that when your time is evaluated, it is exclusively used to please God. Not any of it is available anymore for other use. This is when you go to the person who's helping you with, let's say, financial investments. Let's say you have an investment of, let's say, 100,000 rand. And that's accrued interest, and that's a number that's hard to remember because it's 1,100 and 200, whatever, 76 cents at the end. And you go to your broker and you say, I want to clear out the account. And he's like, no, why don't you leave 50,000 here? Use 50,000 for what you need, medical emergencies or whatever. Leave 50 because it's going to generate income for you. And you're like, no, I don't want one little bit of, I don't even want 1 cent available for you to use in your wise, unwise ways. I want to take all of it because I have a different purpose for it. Okay, you're clearing out the bank account, you're closing the account, you're cutting up the card, you're removing his phone number, the broker's phone number from your phone because you have no reason to talk to him ever again. You're redeeming it all back. You're taking all of it out so you can use it for a particular purpose. Now, this is what we do with our time then. So, a timely word picture. Pun intended there. Think of this paying the ransom to get everything back for yourself because it got hijacked by the evil world. And I'm not talking about your next minute and your schedule for the week. I'm talking about your time here on earth, the season. Now, the reason why I'm focusing on the season, not the particular time, is because there are different words for time in the Greek and Hebrew language to refer to more the moments versus the seasons. Okay, we have the same words in English, moments or seasons. Time is a bit of a collective. Turn now to a poem about time that talks about the seasons and the moments. Turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 3. Ecclesiastes chapter 3. So you've got Psalms, Proverbs, and then Ecclesiastes. What's the topic of Ecclesiastes? I hear mumbling. Confusion? No, not confusion in your heart, confusion in this world. Ecclesiastes, what's the most repeated word? Vanity, uselessness, futile, futility. I had a biblical counseling professor who preached on the vanity of Ecclesiastes once at a conference. And he used a very theological term to describe vanities. He's obviously a Bible scholar. He said, soap bubbles. Okay, it's poofy, it looks nice, and then it just goes flat, and there's just nothing left. They pop, there's nothing left. Just soap bubble stuff. That's how he described the world. Ecclesiastes is all about the days are evil. And no matter how wise you want to be, you end up a fool no matter what you try. If you're not going to fear God, this life is useless. And most of this book is depressing to read. Okay, there are literally debates and commentaries. Is this a positive book that talks about the negative, or a negative book that's trying to include the positive? Okay, it's depressing. There are very few passages that you look at and say, oh, I like this one. This one all by itself is just wonderful and good. Ecclesiastes 3, the first half, is one of those little sections in Ecclesiastes that has no vanity in it. It's got purpose. It's got direction. It's got clarity of thought on reality. It's like walking through life with the lights on finally. Okay, it just makes sense. Everything makes sense. It's not that everything is beautiful and wonderful. There's still the diversity of things. There's the rich man and the poor man, and there's things that work and things that don't work. But everything just makes sense. And it's a poem on time. Let's read it. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1. For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. So it's not just that he's going to say, oh, it's wonderful, we're focusing on the positive times. We're talking about it all. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. Time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. It's true, isn't it? And he continues even further, 9 to 15, still part of this wonderful no vanity section. And he says, what gain has a worker from his toil? It's like, what purpose is there to life? What benefit is there to everything you do? And his answer is not, it's useless, there's no benefit. Look what he says, verse 10. I have seen the business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. He has made everything beautiful in its time. There's a Christian song about that. Also, he has put eternity into man's heart, so the timelessness into your heart. Yet so that man cannot find it what God has done from the beginning to end. So he made us know there's eternity, but not in a fully revealed way. I perceive that there's nothing better for them than be joyful, do good as long as they live. Use the right time for the right thing. Also, that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all his toil. This is God's gift to man. I perceive that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it. Nothing can be taken away from it. God has done it so that people can fear before him. That which has already been and that which is to be already has been, and God seeks what has been driven away. His point in this section in Ecclesiastes, this wonderful section in this book, is there's a time for everything, okay? And once you understand that, and once you live according to that, you will see that while you are making the best use of your time and you're redeeming your time to please God, God is working out His purpose, which has already been fixed. Nothing can change. It's definitely going to happen. Take heart. It's not going to fail. You just use your time well. You redeem it from the evil days. You use it and do good. And you will realize that everything works together just perfectly. There are bad things and good things that all works together in its perfect time so that more people can fear God and recognize that we're going to live for eternity. And we're not exactly able to comprehend that. It's not quite in our capabilities, even though we can comprehend the fact that it's a reality. And so we'll leave it to God and we trust God with that. Oh, it's a wonderful little section here in this book. But there's two sides to this poem on time. There's two sides to it. And it's not the positive and the negative. You see that kind of, right? Time to be born and time to die. Okay, you're like, yes, every doctor knows that. Time to plant and time to pluck up what is planted. Every gardener knows that. Time to kill and a time to heal. Every veterinary knows that. Time to break down and time to build up. Everybody in construction knows that. Time to weep and a time to laugh. Every family knows that. Okay, it's obvious. You go through it and you realize this makes all perfect sense. That's not what I'm talking about. There's two sides, positive and negative. The two sides I'm talking about is first, a time for each activity. So when we're going to develop a theology of time practically for our lives, we have to recognize that there is a time for each activity. We're going to focus on activities later. For now, there's a time for each activity. There is a time to weep and there's a time to laugh. Now is not the laughing time. Now is the laughing time. And just go and do the appropriate thing. We'll get to that in a moment. Do the appropriate action. We'll get to the activity. But start by saying there's a time for certain things and not for other things. Let me give you a very practical example. There's a time to work and there's a time to be at home. There's a time to be at home and there's a time to work. There's a time to call family and there's a time to call friends. There is a time to go to church and there's a time to go to unbelievers. Right? Okay, things have their time. And you have to allocate the time for that thing. And say, now is not the time for soccer. Now is the time for schoolwork, son. Now is not the time to be on my phone. Now is the time to be on my computer and work. Allocate your time well. Make sure you're allocating it wisely and not just mushing it all together. If there's one thing this poem teaches you is that it's not all mushed together. Now, my time to rejoice might at the same minute of the day be your time to weep because we're in different contexts, but it doesn't mean we all mush it together. Just say, every day, everything happens. Well, that's true, but that's not the point here. The point is, there's a time for you to allocate for certain things that you shouldn't allocate to other things. That's helpful, isn't it? So allocate the time slots. This is where you go from my season on life. I've bought all the time because it's mine again. I've redeemed it from the world's way of telling me how to use it. Now, let's allocate it. It's mine now. I can do with it whatever I want. And I can allocate it. I grew up in a home where the time was often allocated contrary to the world. It makes the world's eyes go this big sometimes. I saw somebody recently who went on a holiday that they couldn't afford during school holidays. So they went on this holiday, outside school holidays, but they took the kids along with them. And the teachers were in uproar on social media. How could you do this and deprive them from their education? And eventually the dad replied and said, we educated them. And we taught them about the wise use of time and money and family and importance. And they still passed their exams, so don't worry about that. Okay, time for each activity. The other side of the coin in the psalm, though, is an activity for each time. You've redeemed your time. You've bought it back from the world's way of thinking. You said, I'm going to decide what happens with my time. And then you've allocated time. Okay, this is work time, this is family time, this is cell phone time, this is rest time, this is whatever time. We'll get to that just now. Now, go and fill that time slot with the right activity. You've done the allocation, the scheming, the planning, the prioritizing. Now go and get busy. And so if it's family time, get off your phone. If it's rest time, put away your work. If it's work time, stop playing internet games. If it's time to just be quiet and meditate a bit and think, turn your phone off. If it's time to work in the garden, then don't take your car keys with you. Okay, now go fill the time with the right activity. There is a time to pluck or plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. Now is planting time, so let's get planting. Okay, farmers understand this very well, farmers among us. There's harvest time, and there's planting time. This time of the year is not planting time. Okay, unless you have very hyper-controlled environments on your farm, this is not planting time. You'll be an idiot to now go out and plant. So allocate your time wisely and then fill it with what you've allocated it with. Do that in all your life. By the way, if you really do want to feel bad about this in a sluggard kind of conviction sense, I think it's on our church website. If it's not, I'll make sure it's there. There's a time-wasting worksheet. It's a terrible exercise, but it's absolutely liberating. So what it is it's literally, you can make your own for the hours you're awake. It's basically life split up in half hours. And the idea is, go print it out, do it for a week, start this afternoon. For every half-hour slot, just write down the main activity. Okay, so if you're at work for 4 hours and you're actually working from 8 to 12, then just kind of draw lines through those, 4 hours, 8 slots, then 8 half-hour slots, and just say work. And then you're like, actually there, for probably a whole half hour, I was actually just talking to a friend outside on the phone. Cool, talking to a friend outside on the phone. I came home, what did I do the last activity? Actually, I think I was just playing Sudoku or something for the last half hour, so you put that in. It's just accounting, okay? You're just keeping a record. If it makes you feel guilty halfway through, it's probably appropriate. But the point is not to feel guilt, the point is just to see where did it go. Because you didn't allocate it, or if you did allocate the time, you filled it with something else. And that exercise shows it to you. One of the most disciplined men that I know, he's in his 70s already, chemical engineer, back when I spoke to him more regularly, still did this once a year. He's retired. He's got very few cares in the world, besides evangelism and the ministry of the church, and that weighs heavy on his heart. He still does this once in a while, just to see if I'm still on top of my time. Redeem it, get it back. Practically then, here are some concepts you might want to think of. And these applications, timely applications, I'm going to share them just briefly. You can go far with these. These are things that Scripture addresses a couple different ways. We're not going to focus on all that. Our time is too short. But these are also things that I have learned and heard from godly, older, mature men and women. They talk about these things. I've got one older pastor in my life that calls me every once in a while, and often it's just a theological intrigue, and he wants to know how I think about it, about this passage and that passage. But every once in a while, it's something like this. I remember driving down to Durban once for that inerrancy thing we did, and just out of the blue, sitting next to him in the car, kind of squished in the back seat. He's like, so what's your view on entertainment and recreation? And what do you do for recreation? I don't know. Is there a difference? I certainly don't know what I do for it. Okay, I work. I like work. I like staying busy. And we talked about it, and Scripture addresses these things, and it teaches us a bit of balance in life. So let's first talk about two kinds of time wasters. Okay, these are little application things just to help you get started. Two kinds of time wasters. Oh, that is the movements here are a bit weird. Stick to the top bit. You've got laziness and busyness. Both of them are time wasters. We're talking about redeeming our time. The two things that waste the most time is somebody who's just overtly lazy in that time, not somebody who is. You, when you are in that time overtly lazy, and you waste time on the other side when you are overly busy. Okay, so the overt lazy moments of time and the overly busy moments of time are typically time wasters. Time wasters. Be careful of both those extremes. Okay, you see that in the book of Proverbs with the sluggard. The sluggard is not just the lazy man who's forever on his bed. Remember that picture, like a creaking door hinge? He's on a hinge on his bed. He goes this way and creak that way and creak this way. Lots of energy to flop around, but no energy to get up. Okay, that's the overtly lazy person. The overly busy person is the sluggard in Proverbs that always has an excuse because he's busy with other things. He's always distracted. Okay, I'm not typically the overtly lazy one. I am typically the overly busy one. It really hit me hard as an illustration of my life and in my final year exams at university, I guess it was. The week of exams, where the exams were the most intense, was also the week where my desk was immaculate. And my room was super clean. Okay, yes, you need a clean room and an organized desk, but not when you're supposed to be studying. This is a time to study. And I'm getting up, I'm like fiddling with this, and I'm straightening that out, and I'm kind of fixing this little thing that broke 10 months ago. Now all of a sudden needs to be fixed. That's overly busy. It's busyness. So there's two kinds of time wasters. Watch out for those two. Okay, you want to be busy, but productively so. You don't want to be too busy. Usefully busy. There's also two kinds of relaxation. And the two kinds of enjoyment is even more relevant for times. Two kinds of relaxation. This is the recreation versus entertainment distinction that this older pastor gave me. And you see it in Ecclesiastes. He talks about enjoying the things of life. And that enjoyment we'll get to in a moment very clearly. But first you have to recognize that there is relaxation that relaxes and builds you up, and there's relaxation that makes you more tired. Okay, you know what I mean. I'm just going to relax for a moment. So, what was the fruit of that relaxation 10 minutes later? I'm just like, I'm beat. Versus, I'm ready. Okay, what's next? There's two ways of relaxing. One is recreation. That is you doing something that's relaxing, it's enjoyable, but it also energizes, and it revitalizes. This is where you have some who will say, businessmen especially, we're going hunting, we're going fishing. I just like it. It feels like work from observer's point of view, but they just love it. And yes, they might have been sleeping even less hours than they normally do at work, but they come back to work a week later, and they're on fire, man. They're ready. They're going to sign contracts. They're going to travel for business. They're going to send in quotes. They're going to hire and fire and start new adventures. They're full of life. That's recreation. You're relaxing and getting away from the anxieties of life, enjoying everything God has provided so lavishly in this wonderful world, and you come back absolutely revitalized. Then there's the kind of relaxation that's more entertainment-oriented. You plop down on a couch, you find a remote because it's too hard to walk to the button, and you click. That's because there's nothing to watch, you keep clicking. How many of you found out an hour later you're still clicking? Okay, even YouTube figured that one out. Here's the recommended list. You always click on that before the other one is done because the ad popped up and you're in any case bored. They just keep sending you new stuff. And they diversify the selection significantly because they know you get easily bored. And they want to keep you. That's wasting time. It's relaxation in our books, but it's not doing us any good at all. In fact, entertainment, though a mega industry in our time, was somewhat looked down upon by the Christians, especially in the New Testament era. Entertainment was what only the super wealthy, corrupt politicians could indulge in. And Rome was famous for their entertainment. Everything from their secret orgies that weren't always so secret to their games, okay, the theaters that exist to our day 2,000 years later. The Colosseum with the immoral stuff that happened there and ungodly, brutal things. That was entertainment. Entertainment tires you out. It doesn't make you more productive. So be careful, Christian. Buy back your relaxation time. And still allocated relaxation, you need it. You need rest and relaxation. Maybe you could use rest as alternative to relaxation here. You need rest, but make sure it's rest that actually makes you recoup your energy. Rest isn't just there because I worked hard and I'm resting. Rest is to charge up the battery again. Even your device knows it needs to go down and get plugged in, okay? You figure it out, okay? That you need rest that revitalizes. Where do you think the whole hobby industry came from? It's people saying, I'm not going to do this work because I need the income. I'm going to do this work because I need to just boot myself. Okay, I need to just get away from the anxieties of life, fiddle with something that I thoroughly enjoy. It doesn't have to make money. It can even cost money. I don't care. That's not the point. The point is, this exists to revitalize me. Work exists to pay the bills. And for some of us, it does revitalize us too. But you need that rest that builds you up again. So this older pastor who asked me specifically about this, he's big on fishing. So I said, what kind of fishing? It's like any fishing. It's not because he's a good fisherman. It's because that is how he gets his family together, especially his boys, he says, and then the wives, they have a different view of relaxation, he says, and they go, and also still recreation. They're not much for entertainers, being entertained. He says, it's my boys and my grandson now too joins us, and we just go fishing. Sometimes it's just 4 hours on a Saturday morning, other times it's a whole week long. We do that intentionally because it builds us up. We're in ministry. Ministry is tough. He's a missionary, travels all across Southern Africa. He says it's tough. And yes, then he climbs again into his oversized SUV that he uses for missionary and work in Southern Africa, hitches a big boat to the thing and drives 3 hours again to get to a particular spot. But he says that driving is completely different. And then there's two kinds of enjoyments by way of application. Enjoyments. Look at Ecclesiastes 3. Ecclesiastes 3. You can look at enjoyment, the pleasures of life, as a reward from God, or you can view it as something that you've entitled yourself to because you think you deserve it. Okay, verse 12. I perceive that there's nothing better for them to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Also that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure. Okay, this isn't relaxation. This is enjoyment, fun, pleasure. Take pleasure in all his toil. This is God's gift to man. It's not your right. It's a gift from God to you. You can contrast this later in Ecclesiastes where he says, work is futile. You might be the best business owner in the whole wide world that makes an absolute killing off your work. You are the richest man ever, and you die, and it all goes to your son who blows it through entertainment. That's not rewarding. But you've become entitled. I made it, I get to keep it, I get to enjoy it. That man is not a happy man typically. But the man who works hard because work is good and then rests because God makes it possible for him to rest, and then rests and realizes, oh wait, my peach tree has ripe peaches, let's eat the peach, I love peaches, and enjoys life as God's gift to him, that's the man who has purpose, who's using his time well. You need to understand that enjoyment in life is not a given since the curse. We're not here to enjoy life. Life is not enjoyable anymore. Did you read the rest of Ecclesiastes? So if you find any enjoyment in life, sit back a bit and enjoy it then, as God's gift to you. If you expect, because you've told yourself you have a right to it, expect enjoyment in this life, you will be sorely disappointed in life. And you'll end up writing books like Ecclesiastes without the happy parts. But if you work in this toilsome life and you say it is going to be hard, the next life is the rest one. This is the work one. And then something enjoyable pops along. And we have lots of those moments, don't we? By God's good grace, especially in our country, lots of enjoyable things. Then sit back. Now it's a time to enjoy. You are running around like a rat all week long after your work. Now it's time to sit back and enjoy. Okay, Mike and I even had a moment of that on Friday. Now, Friday night is hectic in our house. It's dropped kids off at the same place 3 times for different reasons. And every time I drive there, it's different stages of load shedding in different parts of the route. It's absolute chaos. It's roadworks. It's water gushing out of roads. It's people everywhere. It's chaos. Okay, Friday night is not a pleasant night. Friday night, I show up at 9 o'clock to go pick Mike up. He's the last reason to go there, pick him up again. It's dead dark. Okay, there's not a light in sight. It's load shedding everywhere around us. The only lights visible were the stars. Not even the moon was out. Even the moon was load shedding. And I told Michael, look, and keep looking, and you see more and more and more, just with the naked eye even. And we just took a moment. We just, both of us, just stood like that for a while. It was freezing cold too. We just stood there for a moment, just enjoy it, okay? And think that those tiny little stars are apparently, according to scientists, like 1,000 times the size of the sun. They're just that far away. So the fact that you can see them is really impressive. They seem to flicker. Why is that? And we don't really know, but we can philosophize about it, staring up at the sky. That was a time to just enjoy. Okay, it wasn't allocated by me. It was more sovereignly designed by God. And we took it. And we enjoyed it. It could have been 10 minutes longer. It was cold, so it wasn't. Okay, we don't work in order to rest and enjoy life. We work because now it's time to work, and work is good. And then we rest, because now it's time to rest, because you can't work forever. We're not God. And so we rest. And when we rest, we rest. And we enjoy things in order to enjoy things. Enjoyment has its own value. It's like that statement, we play at our worship, we worship our work, and we work at our play. Okay? So when it comes to worship, we just kind of whatever goes, okay? It's like the average youth meeting. You do something silly and then you call it a youth meeting. So you're just playing at your worship. And then you go to work and you worship your work. Okay, whatever your boss says is the law of God. And everyone has to submit to that. And then you get to your relaxation and your play and your hobbies, and you actually work at that. That's where you're excited, and you get in and you work hard, and you get it all wrong. Why don't we work when we work, we play when we play, and we worship when we worship? Now, that's a theology of time. Redeem your time, buy it back from the world, allocate it appropriately, and then fill it with the right activities. And here are some practical, just principles of wisdom. Scattered throughout Scripture, you'll find these principles that we should think through. Now, the song. I have no idea what song to go with this. So I searched and I searched and I searched. I found 3 amazing hymns. And I chose one of them. It's not a very familiar one. Some of you will know it, though. I've certainly sung it in different contexts before. And it's a song written by Foliote Pierpoint. Maybe Folio, I don't know, maybe it's French, but he's in England. In 1863, and just outside Bath, England. Now, Foliote Pierpoint, was a son of a very wealthy man back in the 1800s. So think like British wealthy aristocracy kind of mansion people. In any case, he didn't have to work, Mr. Foliote or Mr. Pierpoint. He didn't have to work. He got so much money from his dad as an inheritance, he could live his whole life and pay for everything. He was a Christian, though. So he still didn't work as a job to earn income. He taught some of the classics at the local university from time to time because he was well educated. But he spent his time, he still redeemed his time, he spent his time often just walking around and enjoying creation. And then the rest of his time, he also spent studying. He loved studying and learning things, obviously, that Christians are always famous for, learning things, understanding things. He wasn't a famous scientist because of it. He wasn't a famous philosopher or anything. But he was a brilliant writer. He loved writing, so he took a lot of time to write. He didn't have to do it for a living. He just did it because it's a good use of time. He wrote over, I think it was over 100 poems. There's 3 volumes of all his poems that you can find. In any case, he didn't need to work, so he wrote poetry. This particular poem, put to music shortly after this, was written while just observing nature. Okay, it was one of those recreation times, which he had a lot of. Not entertainment, recreation. He went into nature, he'd just go for long walks. Yeah. Bath is a beautiful part of England. Walked around there. He's super wealthy. He doesn't have to worry about anything in life. So he walks, but it's not just aimlessly walking and being part of the town gossip. He's worshiping. And he writes this poem while just out enjoying creation. For the beauty of the earth, for the glory of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies, Lord of all, to you we raise this, our hymn of grateful praise. Isn't that a great start to the song? The little chorus is that one-liner in italics. For the wonders of each hour, of the day and of the night, hill and vale, trees and flowers, sun and moon and stars of light, Lord of all, to you we raise this, our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of ear and eye, for the heart and mind's delight, for the mystic harmony linking sense to sound and sight, Lord of all, to you we raise this, our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of human love, brother, sister, parent, child, friends on earth and friends above, that's talking about saints who've gone to heaven already, for all gentle thoughts and mild, he has a nice life, right? All gentle thoughts and mild, Lord of all, to you we raise this, our hymn of grateful praise. For thy church, that evermore lifteth holy hands above, offering up on every shore her pure sacrifice of love. I love how he adds every shore there. He says, I'm thinking of our local churches, but I'm thinking of how this go across all worlds. For thyself, best gift divine, to the world so freely given, for that great, great love of thine, peace on earth and joy in heaven. Lord of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. That's a man who had too much time on his hand and redeemed it all. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we are going to depart from here and start using our time for different things. May we redeem it every hour to be a hymn of grateful praise to you. Lord, thank you for the heaters in this room. Thank you for the padding on the chairs. Thank you for the light coming through the windows. Lord, thank you. Most importantly, though, for your Son who unites us all together to go out into this world and live radically different, vastly different, especially so in the way we use our time. Bless us in this pursuit. For Jesus' sake, amen.